Alright, to model the next floor, I will open the plane of the floor layout reference and set it to the position matching the previous floor. That is this outline here. It's two light lines. And here's the next floor. It will be darker. Please note that there's a ledge, protrusion, and from this side, it's recessed in a way. So in this picture, we can see the difference in the elevation from the garage to the next wall, about 1/2 meter. Bring it all in width, adjust to the right and left, and we might have to scale it a little bit, but I believe that the reference matches more or less. There's likely an error from this side because there's no connection on the same level. But in any case, it looks generally all right. Now isolate this reference and outline. We outline only the outside walls marked black and the inside partitions. Apply extrude. Set value to 315. Later on we'll be able to edit this proportion from the photo, set it higher or lower. I'll put this image with this facade a bit closer. To check proportions, we'll try to visually divide it into 3 parts and see that the height of the upper part is the same as the window height, and the lower part is a bit smaller. Okay, so we select points and correct the facade like this. As a result, this window is rectangular and this one is rectangular too, but it's longer. And we've got something like that. Since we're working by the photo, we can edit on our own given that our proportions meet our expectations, so that they fit the style and general architecture of the building. And we do the same with this facade. It has similar rectangular windows. I believe that we can make the same height of windows as the height of the opposite facade, just by evening them out by snaps. Okay, done. Let's check. Color gray. For this floor, we need to draw an individual floor, since we have these openings here, from this side and over from that side. Isolate our reference and draw the floor on the top view. Besides the reference, we can use these interior walls like this. Since the points by snaps are at 0 level, I even them up a bit, and after that we need to compare it with the floor shape from the previous floor. Display both elements, isolate them, and we need to set this region. They're similar, but I'll edit them so that everything is accurate. Later on, we can insert a staircase here so that it goes from one space into another with no displacement. Set the shell value to 15 as usual, and the next overlapping is done. Copy this overlapping, which will be our ceiling, and copy this one down. It will be a floor. Isolate two elements to even them up by snaps. This plane is to the point. Done. This floor is basically done. Now we move on to the structure of the last floor. Now, as you can see, it hangs over from this side here, and it outlines the terrace from that side. So there's an exit to the terrace over there. The situation is a bit unusual, and that's why we apply extrude modifier with the value of 250. Convert it into a polygon object, connect opposite edges, extend this form, and this will be the base shape. Then I'll just delete these openings here. We don't need them. Here we'll have a window block. Set the height along the z-axis to 200 centimeters. Alright, so the frame is almost ready. So what we need to do now is we need to adjust it to the photo. I raise the structure to the level where it will be located. Also know that there's an inset, a kind of railing of the terrace. So we lower it to this level, and we are guided by the proportions of how this overhang looks relative to the window. Something like this. On this side there'll be doors, and this will be the exit to the terrace. And on this side, you can barely see it, but we do understand that it will be something similar, and it will look like this. Alright, so we can immediately organize the floor of the terrace so that, just to make it correct, to make this kind of structure. Alright, that's done. And then we need to shift this wall in the right way in order to observe this geometry. And maybe we just shift it to the left a little bit. And we certainly need to shift it like this to the left to have it on the same level. Now it looks more or less like that structure, which is here. Now we can outline this this part here, and also this part. And so before we set thickness to these walls, I'm gonna go ahead and delete the bottom polygon and assign the shell modifier. And we don't forget to look at the photo, at the thinnest part, And we can set about 30, maybe even 25 centimeters, 25 to 30. And we'll adjust the remaining parts manually, and that's why I set only the thinnest part. And the shape is also what's interesting to me at the moment. So this point that we've made manually corresponds to reality, this corner of the roof slope. And I can move it here in the front view. Alright, now this part looks correct. The easiest way to add a lintel here is to increase the number of edges and apply the bridge function. Enable the graphite modeling tool. Take the Swift loop tool. Add a loop from the edges at about this height. And here we already have some of the edges, and we can raise them to the same level. Now we only need to close them. Select these edges, click Connect, move closer, scale to have them in the same plane, like this. And now we apply bridge to the inner polygons. We'll fill this space later. Now our task is to set the correct proportions. It's quite high, but since it's the perspective view, it's still not at the terrace railing level. Let's look at the proportions of how much this part is wider than this one over here. So approximately twice as thin. I'm sorry, twice as wide. So let's raise it, and we also see that these parts are wider, and we can correct it right away. So to correct the width, I'll add some polygons, and also I'm gonna increase polygons in scale mode, only along the Z and X axis holding Shift. So this way we increase the mesh density, and here I return everything to the previous level and set these points like this, a little bit wider. Alright, that's done. So our topology remains about the same, but the geometric dimensions change. So in the same manner, I raise to this level from this side. The geometric dimensions change, but the topology remains the same. Now if we want to check the size, we can separate this edge, create shape from selection, and use it as the dimension we can be guided by. So, for example, by setting it in this part, we can set the thickness for convenience. And why do we need this dimension? Since we're working not by drawing, but rather by a photo, we need to use some kind of binding to convey the shapes most proportionally, since we can measure accurately in centimeters or millimeters here. We must show the correct proportions, and that's why these measures and methods are appropriate in this method, in this modeling method. So it's fast and convenient. So there we go. Inside the previous floor crosses the space of our top floor. So we need to fix that. I also noticed a small mistake on the door here. An accidentally protracted point. We can fix it right away. And now to correct this detail intersecting our next floor, we can use the Smart Extrude tool. And to do this, we add one more ring of edges, and using Smart Extrude, having selected this part, we hold Shift and move the polygons down. And we need to select one part of the plane, only one. Hold Shift and drag the polygons down. In 3D Max versions featuring Smart Extrude, this tool can work in this way. And that's it. Let's just pull it up. Let's pull this part a little bit. And now it looks more correct than before. So if light gets in the floor space, everything will be right there. So you can also move it down if you need. However, nothing will be visible from the window. From this side, the frontal more or less corresponds to reality. But I add a detail here. Once again, I hold Shift, pull, we can bring it to the opposite wall. But for the logic of the joint, you may pull it to this level, and then it will be much easier to connect. And from any angle of perspective, and everything will look without any errors from below. Now we'll make these areas of the floor and internal partitions using the techniques that we already know and have used before. Alright, so for convenience, to make an object transparent, we can press Alt-X and then it becomes semi-transparent. Sometimes it's convenient to see the reference through. Now we can cut these walls with the quick slice tool, snapping to these lines here. Alright, that's done. The build edges allow us to delete polygons in a beautiful way. And so they will be strictly back to back with the ceiling. If something remains, we can delete that too. Alright, it's done. Now in the next video, we'll move on to glazing. We'll glaze all window openings. The box is ready. We'll cover some other spaces which are open now. Add a terrace here. And we'll glaze. Alright, see you in the next lesson.